210 miles an hour over water. That's not a typo. That's what Miss GEICO, the legendary offshore powerboat, could do. While most people think speed belongs to cars on racetracks or jets in the sky, this boat proved otherwise. 1 second it's skimming the surface, the next it's airborne, slammed back down by a wave. Honestly, offshore racing is brutal. It doesn't forgive mistakes. And yet, Miss GEICO didn't just survive in that world, it dominated it. This floating green beast won over 100 races and became so famous that kids lined up just to touch it. This is the story of how a team of engineers and daredevils created a machine that redefined what was possible on water. Let's get one thing clear right away. Offshore powerboat racing makes car racing look easy. These aren't normal boats you see at the lake on weekends. We're talking about 40 to 50 foot long boats made of super light materials that have more power than a train and weigh less than your family car. This is one of the most brutal forms of motorsport in the world. Formula One drivers get million-dollar safety systems and smooth tracks. But offshore racers get a helmet and pray the ocean doesn't eat them alive. Inside, they are packed with twin engines that together produce thousands of horsepower. The engines are so loud that crews need special ear protection just to keep their hearing. Unlike cars or motorcycles, boats have no traction. The hull isn't gripping a surface. It is skipping across the top of the water like a stone. Every bump changes the balance of the boat. The faster it goes, the more unstable it becomes. If the nose of the hull lifts too far, the entire boat can blow over backward. If a wave catches it wrong, the hull can slam down hard or take flight. That's why offshore racing is so intense. Land speed records are already dangerous, but water adds another layer of chaos. Drivers aren't just fighting for speed, they're fighting the sea itself, and the sea never plays fair. The spray blinds vision, the salt eats away at the equipment, and the constant pounding tests both the machine and the crew. Some drivers describe it as riding a bomb that's constantly about to explode while someone throws rocks at your face. This was the world Miss GEICO entered, and it was about to change everything. The story of Miss GEICO began in the mid-2000s. A man named John Hagen wanted to build a boat that could do what no one else had done before. Hagen wasn't just some rich guy with a hobby. He was a serious racer who understood that winning offshore meant thinking completely different from everyone else. Mark Granite became the driver, the one who would guide the boat across the water at impossible speeds. Alongside him was Scotty Bogovich, the throttleman, controlling the raw power of the engines with split-second precision. Together, they formed a crew that combined experience, technical skill, and nerves of steel. The boat they built was a 50-foot catamaran designed by Mystic Powerboats. It wasn't made of ordinary fiberglass. Its hull was built with carbon fiber and Kevlar, strong enough to take the pounding of the waves while staying light enough to fly over the water. The design alone made it special, but the real magic came from what was inside. Miss GEICO became famous for its turbine engines. Some stories say they used Lycoming T-55 turbines from Chinook helicopters, each producing over 3,000 horsepower. That version makes for a great headline, but the setup most often confirmed was the Lycoming T-53 turbine. Each of those made between 1,800 and 2,100 horsepower. Why go with turbines? The answer was simple. Nothing else delivered this kind of power. Turbines respond instantly to the throttle. They scream with a sound unlike any piston engine. And when they spool up, they create a wall of horsepower that feels limitless. Other teams had tried turbines, but no one had a boat as refined, as balanced, or as reliable as Miss GEICO. The result was a machine that looked like a spaceship, sounded like a jet, and would soon dominate offshore racing. Miss GEICO didn't just want to win races. The team wanted to prove how fast their boat really was. On record day, the pressure was crushing. The team had spent months preparing, and everything came down to a few minutes of pure speed. In this test, Miss GEICO showed what it could do. The turbines roared, the hull skimmed across the water, and the GPS clocks ticked higher and higher. Granite had to keep the boat perfectly straight while flying over water at a speed that would make highway police faint. When it was over, The average speed came in at 188.5 miles per hour. That made Miss GEICO the fastest boat in the turbine class and secured its place in the record books. This record mattered because offshore boats rarely go for top speed runs. They're built to survive in rough races that last miles, not to shine in a straight line. Miss GEICO was the fastest offshore racing machine of its time, and now it had the paperwork to prove it. Think you'd be brave enough to ride in Miss GEICO at full speed? If the answer is yes, then you're definitely brave enough to click subscribe. The official record was impressive, but the legend of Miss GEICO goes even further. Around the docks and in racing circles, there was talk of something more, maybe 210 miles per hour. What made this speed so special is where it happened. On a glass-smooth lake, with no waves, 200 miles an hour is already dangerous. Offshore, it's almost unthinkable. At those speeds, the smallest wave feels like hitting a wall. The hull is balanced on a razor's edge. And at 210 miles per hour, Miss GEICO was basically flying an airplane that occasionally kissed the water. It was control, timing, and a team that trusted each other completely. The number may never appear in a record book, but it became part of the boat's story. It showed the world that offshore racing had reached a point no one thought possible. It turned Miss GEICO from a champion into a legend. For all its success, Miss GEICO also had moments where things went wrong. The most famous came in 2012 during a practice run in Sarasota, Florida. The 50-foot Mystic catamaran, powered by turbines, caught fire after a gearbox fitting failed. The flames spread so fast that it looked like the boat had been hit by a missile. Watching Miss GEICO burn was like watching a piece of racing history turn to ash. It was a reminder that in offshore racing, danger doesn't just come from crashes. Mechanical failures can be just as deadly. Crashes were an ever-present threat as well. Offshore boats often race side by side at speeds of 150 miles an hour or more. In 2017, a collision at the St. Clair River Classic led to tragedy when another team's boat was struck and a crew member was killed. Miss GEICO's team walked away from that event with heavy hearts, knowing how thin the line is between thrill and disaster in their sport. Every time they suited up, they knew they might not come home. That's the price of chasing the impossible. The risks are not limited to a few accidents. Offshore racing has a history of blowovers, where boats launch into the air like airplanes. At 160 miles an hour, the force of the wind under the hull can lift a 10,000-pound boat straight off the surface. When it comes back down, the impact is violent and often destructive. Many other turbine-powered boats never matched Miss GEICO's success because they ended their runs in wrecks instead of wins. Then there is the human side. The pilots inside endure punishing conditions. Every wave feels like a body slam. G-forces hammer their necks and backs as the boat leaps and lands. The cockpit is loud, hot, and constantly moving. At those speeds, even blinking feels like lost time. Offshore racing demands the same kind of courage and focus you would expect from a fighter pilot. For Miss GEICO's crew, the danger was part of the deal. They knew the risks, but they also knew they were chasing history. Despite the risks, Miss GEICO carved out one of the greatest legacies in offshore racing. From 2006 to 2010, the boat won multiple national and world championships in both the Offshore Powerboat Association and Superboat International. The team dominated so completely that other teams started copying everything about Miss GEICO, from the paint scheme to the engine setup. Even after the turbine era, the team stayed competitive with piston-powered cats from builders like MT1 and Victory. No matter the setup, Miss GEICO was always in the mix for a win. Beyond the trophies, Miss GEICO became an icon. The bright neon green paint made it stand out on the water and in every photo. That green was so bright it could be seen from miles away, and fans started calling it GEICO Green because no other boat dared use the same color. Miss GEICO had its own merchandise line, and people who had never seen a powerboat race still knew that green monster. But every story has an ending. In 2021, GEICO pulled its sponsorship, and the team officially retired the program. The green monster that had once pushed turbines past their limits was no longer on the water. yet its influence still lingers. Miss GEICO proved that 200 miles an hour over open seas was possible. It raised the bar for what offshore racing could be, and it set a benchmark that few boats have even tried to chase since. Now I have a question for you. Would you strap in for a ride like that, or would you watch from the shore? Drop your answer in the comments, and tell me what record-breaking machine you want to see in the next video. Thanks for sticking with me, and if you want more stories like this, smash that subscribe button, tap like, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next wild ride.